have to cheat in order to beat us because the truth is more powerful than their lies. And this is a small battle in God's war. And I'm telling you, when you're on the side of God, who can stand against you? No one can. And we're in the fight and we can't give up. This is time for overdrive.
Listening to the Destroyers of Fake News. Kristan T. Harris and Dawn Via Jr. on the Rundown Live.
Make my everyday dose mushroom coffee with me. You might be skeptical, however, it boosts focus, sustains energy, improves gut health, and more. Use 1 tablespoon of everyday dose and 2 tablespoons of water, and then I froth it. I like to mix it really well just to make sure that it's all mixed together. Add some ice, oat milk, and peppermint creamer. It's so pretty. I love it, and it's so
Visit
good.
therundownlive.com today. Click on our link, and your purchase will support this broadcast of these two lovable guys.
It's that time again. Time to relax, kick up your feet, grab your favorite beverage, and tune in to the Rundown Live, your forecast into the future.
Now, you don't know it yet, but you are listening to History in the Making while you are listening to this show.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man, yet as mortal as his own.
I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!"
Censored by the mainstream media, the destroyer of fake news, and your host of the Rundown Live, Kristan T. Harris.
Welcome to another edition of the Rundown Live, rundownlive.com. I'm your host, critically acclaimed journalist, reporter, and radio host, Kristan T. Harris. Joining me this year is Don Via Jr., sidekick and co-host, and a wonderful mind to have on the program. As you guys know, if you've listened to any of our past programs, we are live on KGRA. KGRA is our syndication. Go check them out, as well as, hey, check out, Everyday Dose. That's one of our sponsors that helps us out as well. You can find all that at therundownlive.com. Share this live link, get in the comment, drop some comments in the chat. We're live on Facebook, Rumble, KGRA, and just about anywhere where podcasts are found. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And there's a lot to go over and a lot to unpack, as the world has been really kind of spinning out of control. And it seems like a lot of people believe we're just starting to get a grasp onto things. And there's a lot of negativity in the world all around. In fact, when we do our broadcasts, often we talk about all the craziness that is going on in the world. And, the main idea is to offer solutions. So we're here as a broadcast to try to feed your brain, be your forecast in the future. And everybody's talking about a lot of different things out there, Don. People are talking drones in the sky. We're going to dive into that. We're going to dive into AI being used to spy on your children and send police to your home and school. They're literally spying on your children in school, and AI is being used as the tool to do so, and is alerting law enforcement and sending them to your children's home. So your home, per se. A lot of people are talking homeschooling these days. Might not be a bad idea, Don. But this year is going to be interesting. 2025. Today's Inauguration Day, January 6th, the infamous January 6th. And it wouldn't be fair to start off the show without discussing the great insurrection of 2021.
Yeah, I find it interesting that today of all days, a lot of channels are discussing that. I saw earlier, I didn't have a chance to catch it because I was so busy today, but I saw the Ron Paul Liberty Report. They were discussing January 6th today as well. And Man, a lot of wild developments. What is it now? 3-4 years on since that infamous day, quote unquote.
Well, and it's interesting also to think that this, for those that don't know, many of you must know, everyone knows, Donald Trump is our next president of the United States. And today's the day they actually voted on making the transition of Trump into office. And there was concern that that might not happen smoothly, but it seems like just like the Republicans, the Democrats are going to go ahead and bow and allow Donald Trump to go ahead and take over and be in office here. So January 6th, he promised that he would release all those people that were unjustly put in jail and in prison. Some of them committed suicide, if I remember right. And what is it that a lot of these quote insurrectionists end quote did? And I'm not here in support of any theory. Was 2020 rigged? I think they're all kind of rigged. I'm starting to adopt the idea that there are puppet masters out there, right? And potentially, I subscribe to the theory that since JFK, most of our politicians that hold important offices have been selected by multinational corporatists, international bankers, and when they look at shaking, the which hand that they're going to be dealt, they kind of influence it, whether through lobbyism one way or another, or through some form of rigging, or they try their best to get the outcome that they feel which would be beneficial for the outcome of their business and their best interest on. And so Donald Trump, who was elected 8 years ago, is now taking office, and everyone believes, not everyone, a lot of people are starting to believe that it is a cure-all, a solution to all the problems. And I'm kind of a skeptic on that point. I don't want to poo-poo because I believe every president has done some good things, Don, whether it's just to keep us at bay or give us some scraps on the table or give us a little bit more. I'm kind of interested to see what this administration holds. Is he going to get rid of the tips, taxes on tips? Are they going to get rid of private property taxes? Because then you'll actually own your property. Will he do anything that he said, like putting Hillary Clinton in prison, where he did it, right? And he built that wall, like a whole 5-mile stretch or something like that. I don't remember how long it was. So a lot of times there's a lot of unfinished things that go on. But January 6th, as you guys know, was an insurrection in 2020. That insurrection basically was to try to prevent Congress from go ahead and okaying the transition from Donald Trump to Joe Biden. And instead of postponing it, the Congress ended up barricading themselves into the White House, right? And making it look like an insurrection because a pipe bomb was left in front of the Republican and Democrat branches of office the day before. And by the way, they have camera footage of just about every insurrectionist, but they can't seem to identify for sure the person who left the pipe bomb. All we are told now is that it was an off-duty police officer who found the pipe bomb.
Yeah, I found it interesting. I was actually perusing through Law and Crime, their website the other day, and I didn't read it because I was in the middle of work. I was trying to find interesting articles to cover, but I did see that they had published a piece that apparently now, finally, all these years later, there is surveillance footage of the individual whom allegedly left the pipe bomb on January 5th. So I've found that to be quite interesting. Another thing I found quite interesting about the whole 2024 selection cycle is that we look back at 2020 and we see all of the red side of the political statist cult crying about, oh, the election is rigged, they mules and ballots and all these sorts of things. And now 4 years, fast forward 4 years later, and it's, oh, it's too big to rig, they couldn't rig it, it's such a victory. And now we have Donald Trump talking about bringing in the biometric surveillance grid and digital ID and all of these things because of those nasty immigrants that the manufactured crisis on the border has brought in, just like many of us, myself, Derek Bros, Whitney Webb, you have predicted over the past several months, Josh Sigurdson, another to name several, who pointed out the false Pied Piper that is the MAGA movement bringing in the next phase of the Great Reset.
Well, and that's just it, right? Donald Trump is talking now biometric scanning
Yeah.
and the need for biometric scanning, which, if you're a religious zealot, maybe even if you're, let's say, you're a Christian, you believe in this thing called the mark of the beast because the Bible talks about it. And what is the mark of the beast? You'll need it. It'll be controlled a way to control you, what you buy, what you sell. You can't do anything without this alleged mark of the beast. And it's crazy that they actually predicted this so many years ago. Was it thousands of years ago? They talked about this almost as if the scripture. What is a script, Don? When you're writing a movie, what is a script?
So I get where you're coming from, but my brain's not able to like connect the dots to exactly the point you're trying to.
Well, the term is a script. When you write a movie script, it's something that is a played out. It's predestined to happen. It's a scripture, like a script for a movie script, like Bible scripture. Why do they call it a scripture? And when you think about it, it's almost like they want you to believe it. Like they're using it as a map to get mind control of a large populace, because a lot of people identify as Christians. And we're talking biometric scanning. I think you made a post, right? Was it on Twitter? About the whole Donald Trump thing?
Facebook, actually.
Facebook. Well, let's pull that up for a second, because it's really interesting since we're talking about the whole insurrection thing and the way things are going. What is it that we are really getting with Donald Trump? And the answer is maybe somebody that's a little bit not as bad as the candidate we thought, which was Kamala Harris, or maybe it could be worse, depending on how the deep state and the international bankers really hoist and condition and engineer things, right? So here we go. We're going to pull this up. This is your page here, Don. And what's interesting to me on your page is the fact that, and you guys can follow us on Facebook too, is here's Donald Trump, at his greatest, right? Talking about this. We're going to go ahead and unmute this. And we'll go ahead and pull this up here. Let's see. Do we have sound? No, we don't. All right.
Not at the current moment.
No, not at the current moment. Why don't we have sound, guys? It's a real. Oh, here you go.
We will ensure that this system is a tracking system, which we need desperately. For years, Congress has we will finally complete the biometric entry-exit visa tracking system, which we need desperately. For years, Congress has required biometric entry-exit visa tracking systems, but it has never been completed. The politicians are all talk, no action, never happens. In my administration, we will ensure that this system is in place. And I will tell you, it will be on land, it will be on sea, it will be in air. We will have a proper tracking system.
Because we're losing a lot of people because of the internet. And we have to do something. We have to go see Bill Gates and a lot of different people that really understand what's happening. We have to talk to them, maybe in certain areas, closing that internet up in some way. Somebody will say, oh, freedom of speech, freedom of speech. These are foolish people. We have a lot of foolish people. We have a lot of foolish people. We've got to maybe do something with the internet because they are recruiting by the thousands.
But that's fascinating. Like, here we have a whole group. How do you guys feel about having a biometric signature everywhere you go, Don? The banks will require your retina scan or your facial scan. Some banks already. I remember listening to a really old Alex Jones episode, like of InfoWars, and he's talking about how they needed fingerprints. He's like, they already have a fingerprint scanners at the bank. You can make your deposit with a fingerprint. And that's like 30 years ago. But here we are, fast forward, and they're talking about biometric scanning. And Donald Trump is like, yeah, okay, we're going to have a biometric fingerprint everywhere you go.
Right.
And that's like, nobody wants that. Not Republicans, not Democrats, Americans in general. And then the whole freedom of speech thing. Whoa. When you think about those things that are being said, that's terrifying. And now, don't get me wrong, that's just the way the society is moving, but that doesn't make it right? Everyone's getting used to being surveilled. We have our cell phones that track everywhere you go. So the rationalist out there who rationalizes their abuse, because this is basically abuse of government, right? They're abusing you by surveilling you at all times.
Yep.
That it is okay, that it's all right if our government decides that they're going to just have biometric scanning. They're going to know your fingerprint wherever you go, everywhere you go. We talked about this on the show maybe 10 years ago called God's Eye Technology. It was, I think, in one of the Batman movies where Batman's like, we need God Eye. No, it wasn't Batman, but Batman was one of those things where he identified the Joker and what floor he was on and everything like that using tech. But it was a Fast and Furious movie where he's talking about God's Eye technology, where it just follows the person throughout their entire day. Everyone has a drone that follows them.
Right. And what I find to be so just incredibly on brand for the ridiculous state of affairs that we're currently in now when it comes to U.S. politics is, Donald Trump now talking about the biometric surveillance, and we need the surveillance for, this, that, or the third. And this is the same guy that during his term was bitching about, oh, they're surveilling me with the illegal FISA warrants. Barack Obama, he's illegally spying on my campaign. And it's like, what are you even doing? Is there logical consistency? Anything like?
But we're going to spy on all American citizens, all Americans that come in and out of the country. Is that really going to stop terrorism, Don? Because isn't it a duty? Isn't it their way to find a way around those systems without using them? Well, and what does that really do? I mean, it would be the same issue we have. So real terrorists, it isn't stopping terrorism, right? It's allowing them to collect metadata on you, which is the new digital gold, right? That's the new oil, is metadata. We give it away free to our Spectrum internet. We give it away free to AT&T, to Cox, and all these other internet data mining corporations that give us and provide us internet, and we pay for it. We pay them to monitor us, Don. And then the government siphons that metadata illegally through their routes and connections, and then they create citizen threat scores and social credit scores on you. They're already starting to do this. Now imagine if they knew everywhere you went and everything you did. It's all about controlling your behavior, Don, because at some point, maybe you decide that you're going to go to a pub. Maybe somebody's being unfaithful to their loved one. They're going to have that data. They're going to have extortion on everyone. And all of a sudden, we're going to live in a society where people aren't going to be allowed or feel like they have free will to make choices without repercussions, because the government will be able to have that data, filter through the data, and know exactly what is going on. Because once you walk into that house that you're going to fornicate and cheat on your loved one with, well, guess what? They got Google Home, or they got Ring Doorbell, or they got the TV on, or the cell phone is in the room. They're going to know at all times. They'll be able to put in your social security number, and it's just going to bring up where you went, your footprint throughout the day, everywhere you go, everyone you communicated, what you talked about, and they'll be able to pull it all up. That's
and sadly, not only that, like I mentioned previously, I mean, Donald Trump is now, he's on record as saying, oh, we got to get the CIA involved. You mean the CIA that was so allegedly, trying to sabotage his first administration, which of course I don't buy at all. And what the people also really need to keep in mind when it comes to the whole, we got to institute the biometric surveillance because of terrorism. Well, who are the terrorists they're talking about? So they're usually bringing up the two major scapegoats, Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Let's not forget that these are products of the CIA. Al-Qaeda created 1979 through 1985 Operation Cyclone, authorized by President Ronald Reagan, and even before Reagan, at the very tail end of the Carter administration. So let's not, I've been seeing a lot of posts since Jimmy Carter died trying to deify Carter. And it's like, yeah, he might not have been the worst out of the last handful that we've had, but let's not put the guy on a pedestal where he doesn't belong. And then, of course, the creation of ISIS, going back to 2007, the early 2010s, Operation Timber Sycamore. We have people like Jake Sullivan, who's, currently sitting in the national security apparatus somewhere. I don't remember exactly which office he's working in right now, but Sullivan, people like Victoria Nuland, John McCain, may he rest in hell, working on this program that created this group, ISIS, Daesh, which is then, went into what Al-Nusra Front, Jabhat al-Nusra, which, just recently, another offshoot, HTS, which I can't pronounce whatever the acronym's for, just overthrew Syria, ousting the Assad government, which has been, long desired by, Western colonialists' ambitions. And, it's literally just Al-Qaeda rebranded to Al-Nusra, rebranded to HTS. And let's not forget that infamous document from WikiLeaks. Al-Qaeda is on our side in Syria. I believe that was Jake Sullivan to Hillary Clinton back in the 2010, 2011, something along those lines. And so, the terrorists that they're saying we need to protect ourselves from are a creation of U.S. intelligence. And then, of course, most recently I saw this morning, they had some former CIA government stooge go on the Sean Ryan show, talking about, the Iran is, working with Al-Qaeda to try to bring missiles across the southern border into the U.S. And it's all a bunch of nonsense.
Well, so this kind of leads me to what people have been seeing across the United States. And yesterday, I hung out with my best friend, Missy, and Missy and I were talking, and her mother and her new boyfriend, because her father passed during COVID, witnessed a drone that they said was car-sized, with a quadcopter drone, right? That was car-sized. And when he pulled out his cell phone and lifted it up to sky to film it, it shot straight up and hit in the clouds. And they said you couldn't make it up. It was like it knew what they were doing. And people all over the United States are now seeing these things. So in my local community forum, all right, we're going to share this on screen. I live in a city called Oak Creek, Wisconsin. This is what is going on. And people are asking these questions. It says, oh, there's Don in the Rundown Live group. We don't need that. It says January 2nd, around 8:15 on Putes Road, east of Howell by the train tracks, two small plane-sized crafts hovering above residential neighborhood. I assumed they were incoming planes to the airport, but as I got closer, I realized they were not moving. Red and green lights on the wings and bright headlight on the front. The third one was spotted above the field across from We Energy's plant intersection, because it's right by the electric plant is here in my town. Intersection 32. My boyfriend was with me and witnessed this also. I was driving and it wasn't safe to pull over for pics. I'm assuming these are what people have been reporting, seeing it all over. And of course, I commented on it could be home insurance companies making sure your home is up to date, because we talked about that on the show, right? Right. And it's
right.
crazy how they use drones. But, people are seeing drones all over the place. They're flying all over the place. And when we're talking about biometric scanners, a worldwide grid where the United States is constantly under surveillance. This is like the movie They Live with Roddy Piper, which is a great movie, by the way.
Yes,
Any conspiracy lover out there has seen the movie They Live. And if you haven't, you failed at being a conspiratard, which basically it's about this guy who gets a magic pair of glasses, and when he puts it on, he sees the propaganda in the world around him, and he sees drones in the sky whenever he looks up at the sky. There's a drone. It's surveilling him. This drone sees me. Maria in the chat says, it is a great movie. Absolutely. You guys go see it if you haven't seen it, right? But They Live talks about this, and people are talking about this, and it's not like it's starting to hit my community. It's starting to hit my neighborhood where people are seeing these drones. My friends' parents saw these drones, and they act mysteriously, and it's mostly at night. Why is it that it's at night? And so I phoned a good friend of ours, Mark D'Antonio. Mark D'Antonio has worked on top secret government programs, and he's a personal friend of mine. I know he's a decent man. All right. There are good people that work for government. There are good people that have contract out for government. And he'll be joining us tomorrow to talk about this more. But he told me that he spoke with two people that work for the Department of Defense, and they claim these drones are private contractors. And he said, I asked him, well, why are they coming? Why are they flying just at night? And he goes, that's the weird thing. He said, if they're trying to hide it, drones are even more noticeable at night because they have to have flashing lights. Makes them visual so other airplanes around can see them, right? And why is it that there's these drones going over our electric power plant, over our airport. And it makes me wonder a couple of things, Don. There's a couple of different ideas that come to mind. But and I want you guys to think about this for a second. I also want to give this a chance right now to open up the phone lines for you guys. If you guys want to call into this broadcast and you've seen these drones, we want to hear from you. You guys can give us a call on this broadcast on 855-472-5483. We have it scrolling on the bottom, and that's 1-855-472-5483. What are these drones and what do you think they are? And I'm gonna tell you what Mark told me here in just a moment, right? So it's conspicuous, Don. When you're coming out of your house, you're just doing your daily deal, and all of a sudden there's a drone. It reminds me of the drone spotting app that Joy Camp did that video. We're like, oh, drone spotting app. Instead of looking for birds, they're out there looking for drones in the sky, and they're like, oh, I can check that one off the list. The Barack Obama, I got that one. It's like it's becoming a reality. And what are these drones doing? Because at night they're more obvious, the lights flicker. Why is it that they're only doing it at night? Is it because there's less people out to see them per se? I don't know. I just have a couple ideas, Don. Or is this the police state wrapping up for surveillance? Obviously, it's a private contractor, because that's what Mark told me. Mark said he talked to a couple people at the DOD, and it's a private contractor. But what is it that they're looking for?
So I have my own hypothesis, and I think it's sort of a mesh of a couple of different things. And first and foremost, a big part of this might just be how jaded I am now. I don't really believe the official story for anything, which, I mean, obviously, if you're in the conspiracy community, it's sort of, that's your entry ticket, right? Never believe the official story. But I think when it first started happening with those drones over New Jersey, I looked into it a little bit, and what I found interesting was that right around the time the Jersey drone fiasco, hysteria, whatever you want to call it, started coming up, it was right around the exact same time that Congress needed to reauthorize a new bill with the FAA. It's called House Bill 8610, HB 8610. If I remember correctly, and it's basically all about reauthorizing some provisions with the FAA and some other government agencies, and extending this, that, or the third, and in layman's terms, to cut to the chase, about expanding government control over private drone ownership. And I even saw several days after that, maybe it's connected, maybe it's not, but right here in Virginia, our local Virginia State Police posted to their Facebook page talking about, oh, if you're getting drones for Christmas, then you need to take that down and get them registered, and you need to have a drone license, and we need to know this, that, and the other. And I just, no. How about no? Beyond that, I do think that partially it could potentially be weaponized for the big, disclosure psyop that's been going on, that we've discussed on this program multiple times, been going on since at least 2017. Getting people spooked about mysterious drones or potential UFOs, or what have you, who knows. And then again, as you mentioned, I think it could also very much just be a part of, a surveillance control grid. We know, and we have covered on this program before, as we have also covered at the Free Thought Project, more and more police departments are finding ways around the restrictions, saying, in some departments, in some states, they're not allowed to have drones, and they're finding ways around those restrictions to get them. And then in places where they don't have restrictions, they're just, getting drones and using them for, more policing, which obviously, rights groups and privacy groups are, very understandably sounding the alarm on that, because of the threats to, personal privacy and things of that nature. So I think it's probably a combination of all three of those things, and more than likely something that I'm either forgetting or just unaware of as well.
So I'm going to tell you what my thought is. If the drones are hovering over the power plants, they're hovering over key areas that are close to the airport, which is a big no-no.
Yeah.
It has to be, I think the local law enforcement and local airport and everyone else has to know that this is happening at some level. They have to make them aware, right? Yeah. But I think maybe they're worried about a terror threat. Whether it be staged or not. You laugh.
Yeah.
but they could be searching for radiation. They could be searching for all sorts of different things using these drones, heat signatures, whatever it might be. But why else would you need to use drones to patrol over a certain area? Now, this could be a false flag. It could be used for,
Right.
like you mentioned the UFO program per se, to get people to buy in that what they're seeing in the sky is UFOs. In fact, majority 99.9% of all UFO sightings are some kind of explainable phenomenon, whether it's
Yeah.
top secret government aircraft, regular airplanes, meteors, whatever it might be. I mean, there's those crazy floating orbs or
Right.
balls of lightning that people see and all those weird natural phenomenon, right? That we
I
don't really
remember
know, plasma.
Right, because I remember when the Jersey drone thing was happening, a friend of mine who was in the U.S. military, he was posting about it, talking about it, and I just commented on there because he's also in the whole truth, UFO disclosure sort of thing, and I just happened to comment on there. I was like, this is to me seems quite striking that it's it seems that it could very well be, a predecessor to Project Bluebeam, because we've been warning about this for however many decades, that they're going to fake some sort of extraterrestrial contact in order to drum up some fear about X, Y, and Z. And there's some unnamed individual who I don't know decided to reply to my comments saying how stupid that was, to which point I said, well, it's a lot more believable than just thinking that, oh, well, I guess Kristan accidentally clicked out and closed out of his browser, as does happen sometimes. But I mentioned that it's a lot more believable than just thinking that one day the U.S. government is just going to roll over and tell us the truth about this most profound secret that they have been keeping from us for decades and decades and decades. I think it's a lot more likely that there's some sort of shenanigans going on.
Well, that's just it. What kind of shenanigans are we talking about? And what is really going on in the world around us, as we don't really know per se what the government is planning and what it is doing. All we know is Project Bluebeam is something that I think was at Warner von Braun warned about on his deathbed, where they're going to literally fake UFO sightings to go ahead and try to convince the world, right? Convince the world that UFOs are real. It's pretty interesting. And
Indeed.
that we need to be saved by government and establish a new world order. Isn't that funny? That's the long-lasting conspiracy, and yet it's people ridicule you if you talk about it, right? So
Right.
it's wild to think about.
Yeah, it most certainly is. And of course, I do think there are multiple facets to it. One thing that I found myself thinking about just the other day was, now that they're moving forward and have been moving forward since about 2016, more specifically 2017, 2018, with this whole false flag disclosure sort of psyop that's going on. Of course, I've always been very much involved in, researching UFOs and extraterrestrials, and disclosure is something that I've always very much cared about, because it's just something that I've been fascinated by ever since I was a child, and I saw this weird unexplained anomaly in the sky that I've told the story here on the show a couple of times, and there it goes again. But it got me thinking whether or not, or rather how much of what has been so-called, quote unquote, declassified by the CIA or some other agencies or the U.S. military over the past several decades was not, or was it, disclosed or declassified deliberately as sort of a primer, setting us up for this, psyop program that they have been sort of gaming us on. So you start going over and thinking about Project Bluebeam and some of those documents. You start going and thinking about some of the Roswell pieces that may or may not have been disclosed by certain aspects of the government. Of course, I've contended quite often that Roswell is generally the one that they tend not to touch with the 20-foot pole. And for those of you who remember our episode that we did with Donald Raymond Schmidt, the world's foremost expert on the Roswell UFO crash, you'll remember the points that I have made about that in regard to, in my professional opinion, as well as his and some others, that it seems Roswell was the real deal, legitimate event, and hence why they don't cover that, because it would open way too many cans of worms, but instead they'll drip out any of these other number of documents and things of that nature. And so, again, go back to thinking about some of the declassified documents we got from the very end of World War II. The allegation that the German forces down in Antarctica discovered a crashed craft in the ice of Antarctica called the Glocke, otherwise
Die Glocke, yeah, the
bell.
German bell,
Mhm.
right? The German
Yeah,
bell UFO.
so as I was discussing with the audience, as you were getting your computer to be more temperamental, I was discussing how much of these documents that have been declassified over the past few decades were done deliberately to muddy the waters, to set up, to pregame for this psyop. How long have they planned to actually run this fake disclosure scam that they've been doing for the past several years? Was it a spur of the moment, oh, we're going to do this now, around 2015, 2016? Or has it been something that has been in the works for a few decades? Because if that is the case, the ramifications or the potential ramifications or the implications of that, and any of the information that we have gotten from the disclosure community raises the possibility that it was a false bill of goods, that it was a deliberate plant, and the implications of that are staggering, earth-shattering, if we really want to go down that rabbit hole.
Well, okay, so let's talk about this for a second, unpack it, right? We got drones flying all over the place. It helps with the UFO initiative. Maybe we'll help some funding of drone security bills. Maybe say, hey, law enforcement needs drones to counteract, local terrorist drones or local organization military drones. We already saw that years ago of them talking about it. But the idea that a UFO false flag, an alien false flag might be plausible, right? That they might want that to happen. I mean, if you search up Project Bluebeam, it comes all over the internet. Werner von Braun warned that they're going to hoax the alien invasion for us to establish a new world order. And that's the playbook. They're programming you to believe that, whether it's true or not, or they can do it through holograms or drones or whatever. Like somebody credible said some wacky stuff and people ran with it, right? Project Bluebeam, holographic aliens in the sky. We need a new world order. We need to sit out there and be ready for this alien invasion. Now, Bart Sibrel, we had Bart Sibrel on the show. If you haven't checked out the episode, go to Spotify, look up the Rundown Live on KGRA, go to therundownlive.com, right? And look up our episode with Bart Sibrel. Bart Sibrel was a moon landing hoax activist, claiming that the photos that were taken, which are fraudulent, and I guess the government is working on a government-sponsored documentary that would say, yes, some of the photos were indeed filmed in America, but yes, we still landed on the moon, even though those were fake, and we banished them as real for so many years. But he said something that was really interesting. He said that people want to believe in a good conspiracy. By that meaning that we landed on the moon. It was a proudful moment. It was everyone like, no, like you can't say that was fake. That was a hoax, because that was a pivotal moment in history, in American history, right? And it was a good conspiracy. People wanted to believe it. People want to believe in aliens, Don. People want to believe we are not alone, that there is more life out there. In fact, there's a CIA document, which we're going to talk about on this broadcast, and we'll segue to it maybe in a little bit, about the government CIA document suggesting that there was once life on Mars, right? And why they believe it is one of the most astounding ways they claim to have found this information out. And we can LOL about it after we talk about the story. But the idea is people want to believe. They want to believe the truth is out there. X-Files, right? People want to believe that aliens exist. And there's people that have had experiences. And I don't mean to take that away from you at all. I've never had those experiences, but you have. And maybe you believe in UFOs or aliens. And I'm not saying there aren't UFOs. And I'm not saying that there aren't aliens. I'm just saying people want to believe, Don. So if there was a UFO, right, and it landed and they just so happen to look like Americans, what would you think? What would people think out there? What would, all of a sudden you'd be worried about national security. Are the aliens already here? Have they hijacked government? And was the New World Order their plot the whole way?
Right. Yeah. I mean, there are so many different angles that we could go down once we actually start, traversing down that rabbit hole. I mean, there is the plausibility that I've heard that, from Roswell on, from the Roswell incident, whatever race of extraterrestrials was involved in that, got in touch with the Truman administration and, the Soviet Union, and that our governments have been in contact with them, since then, with secret agreements and this, that, and the third, and all sorts of unverifiable claims. And another thing to keep in mind, even when it comes to the Project Bluebeam allegations, one thing that comes up, or that I think about, was that allegedly this came from Wernher von Braun on his deathbed. And whilst, of course, in the annals of American history, Wernher von Braun is celebrated as the founder of NASA, and he helped us win the space race and get to the moon and all of these sorts of things. Let's not forget that von Braun was brought over here via Operation Paperclip. The man was a high-ranking Nazi scientist who spent the majority, if not entirety, of the Second World War working on the Nazi rocket program, particularly the V2 rocket program. And it was actually V2 rocket technology that helped, allegedly, build upon what eventually became the Apollo program and the space race that occurred later on. And so it also begs the question, I mean, how much can we actually trust the words of a Nazi, a full-fledged Nazi? Or even, how much can we trust the allegation that he even said a deathbed confession in the first place? Because as far as I'm aware, there isn't, a notarized confession or a audio tape or a videotape. Maybe there is, and I'm just not aware of it. It would be really cool if there was, because that'd be, pretty solid. But it's like, so there's all of these different angles that we can look at, even going further. So like one of the major points that I contend with when I discuss the potentiality of extraterrestrial life is the sightings from antiquity. So there's a site called The Pulse, formerly known as Collective Evolution, run by Joe Martino, and their main editor is Arjun Walia. Great guys, wonderful journalists. They've been in this game for a really long time. And they have covered a lot of, UFO, ET disclosure sort of news over the, past decade or so. And Arjun recently, and by recently I mean within the past year or so, it's probably been a little over a year, wrote an article, two of them, I believe, where he discusses UFO sightings in antiquity. So we're talking 15, 14, 1300s, well before aircraft, well before anything should have been flying in the sky. And yet we have credible firsthand witness accounts of strange objects making these odd movements in the sky, glowing, coming down, going up and down, left and right, all these sorts of things that if they are to be believed, which there are enough that have been verified to say, probably at least some of them, it really makes you wonder what the hell is all going on. And of course, I'm not really one to buy into the whole quote unquote ancient aliens theory.
Why don't you think aliens helped build the pyramids?
Well, so that's a little multifaceted. So I do partially believe that it's possible, hypothetically, for human beings to have been genetically seeded by an extraterrestrial race in our very distant past. I haven't seen any evidence to actually confirm that, so I just say it's maybe possible. But as far as like the whole History Channel series, like it's such a load of hogwash, and I love the meme, right? With what's his name,
Giorgio.
Giorgio, yeah, with the aliens. Love the meme, but it seems like a whole bunch of TV. Let's get the viewers hype.
Free
Yeah.
advertising. People are going to tune in, right? And I've been on Ancient Aliens. Well, a photo of me has been on Ancient Aliens, and that's a whole nother story. So, but it's interesting when we talk about how people perceive UFOs, and some people think they're demons, people think they're spiritual beings, some people like me believe they're physical, maybe they're the watchers that Sumerian texts talk about. Allegedly, the Sumerian translations talk about the Anunnaki, Enki, and Lil Marduk, and these gods, Gadriel, and all these ancient deities that created man on this planet to do their bidding, and they left us in control. And what are we doing with it, right? So the whole ancient alien thing, the whole idea of aliens, I never thought the government would run with it, but since disclosure, and we're going to have Stephen Bassett on next Monday. So if you don't know who he is, he's one of the people that's been involved with disclosure in Washington, D.C., along with Stephen Greer and others that are heavily involved and are there. Paula Asteria, or my friend, and I don't know if she's been on the show. I believe I might have had her on the broadcast once. She actually just came out with a documentary, was involved in a documentary that was #1 on Amazon that I published, which, dives into the fact that majority of these UFOs are potentially just top secret government aircraft. And why couldn't they be? Why, like quadcopter drones that can fly straight up and disappear real fast? Well, how that's what we see that they have. What is it that they're keeping from us, right? The government's already, 50 or 70 years ahead of what they're showing. They already have those aces in the back pocket, and they're working on new technology. So it's interesting. The New World Order, the establishment, the biometric scanning, drones flying around. So the point I was going to make is, who's to say that these drones aren't mapping out local communities for patrols, for future patrols of law enforcement, so that if they get the money for the bills, it'll be a lot more beneficial that if you call the cops on, they'll be there immediately because they're at the station waiting for you, and the drone will just mail out the speeding tickets.
Right. That's always been one of the big concerns when it comes to the use of not only drones, but just robotics in general with excessive policing. I mean, I know just over 2024, we covered so many stories on this broadcast of police departments bringing in robot dogs or drones or, some sort of new biometric scanning technology. And I think a lot of it is really reflective of the way that the 1033 program, which for those that don't know is the program that the federal government uses to basically give surplus military technology to police departments at discount prices, furthering that militarization of police that's been going on since the Clinton era, actually since before that, but Clinton really drove it into overdrive. I think that that's really, part and parcel to, this continued militarization of police that's still going on. And, it's quite concerning when it comes to from a privacy rights standpoint, not to mention just an excessive policing standpoint in general, because of course, to quote the founding fathers, of course, they are the standing army that we were so warned of at the founding of our country. This force that now exists to they say they protect and serve, but they more so protect the state and serve the rich, as it were. Kristan, if you're speaking, I think your mic is muted there, brother.
Yeah, I mean, so when it comes to the drone fiasco, I see a lot on the Chinese drones, drones over America. Why are there so many unexplained drones flying over the United States all of a sudden? Mystery drone sightings continue in New Jersey and across the United States. I think that there's a couple of reasons. Maybe they need more money for a bill, and they want to get people scared to call into their local Congress and be like, yes, we need money for drone protection from other drones, right? because that's how they're going to spin it. They have a drone army. Terrorists have drones. There's going to be a drone attack. See, that's what I'm thinking, Don. There might be a drone attack, and then they can get that funding, that drone funding that they need for a bill to protect our nation, because, of course, we can never allow a drone attack on American soil, right? So why is it that a drone attacked America? It's a false flag. So that would be my idea in my card that I think that the government may play. Like, if I was the government that was crony, it was deep state, and wanted to mess things up in this administration, first thing that would happen, drone strike. Then you can blame it on China, right? Get involved there, and or blame it on somebody else, Russia. And then all of a sudden, we need money for this drone bill. It's that simple. All he needs is one casualty. We're talking billions of dollars. People kill people for less than that, for tens of thousands of dollars or less. I don't even know. I'm not in that market. But I can tell you that when we're talking billions of dollars, people are willing to do pretty crappy things.
Right. And that's essentially, unfortunately, the premise that the entirety of the U.S. government is based off of. It's all pay to play. Especially once we start looking at the way that the international banking cabal works with the U.S. government, or the corporate interests, and the way that they've had their hooks in the U.S. government, going back over a century, at this point. Everything that happens is because of corporate interests and wealthy donors and intelligence apparatus. What can make the rich richer while continuing to screw over the rest of us that just want to be left the hell alone.
Which kind of brings me to the next subject that people are talking about: mystery drones and mystery fog, Don. Mystery fog. People are scared about fog. Like, it's wild. It's one of those TikTok sensations where I just want to spend a moment to talk about this, because a lot of people have been posting about this, including other activists. What is it? I reached out to my friend, industrial hygienist from the military, Kristen Megan Kelly, to talk to her a little bit about it. And it's interesting. Here's a video of somebody on TikTok kind of explaining what they saw and what they're seeing across the internet, with videos of what people are, here's some footage of what people are claiming is nanoparticles in fog, right? People are seeing fog. And when they use their flashlights, allegedly, they're seeing particles float. Otherwise, they don't see them and see the reflecting unless they use flashlights, which I have a couple thoughts on this. But before we do that, let's play this video from TikTok.
Mysterious fog has been seen all over the United States at early hours of the morning, and people are getting concerned. Like in this video here, you can see there's all kinds of little particles floating around, and it doesn't act or smell like normal fog. People are concerned that it might be chemical fog. 40 states have reported seeing this fog, and here you can see it kind of looks a little bit more like normal fog. That's because it's being lit by the light in the sky. But when it's darker and you use a flashlight, then you can see it's little particles that are floating around. It doesn't usually come at night, but only in the early hours of the morning, like from 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. And people are saying it's happened in cities where they've seen the drones flying around, and they're kind of concerned that it has something to do with it. But I think the thing that's concerning most people is the fact that it has a very distinct and weird smell. Sort of like chemicals. Dense fog is one thing, but when they introduce a new smell, that raises reason for concern. But it's this video right here that I find the most frightening, because those particles do not look normal to me. But what do you guys think, and have you seen any fog in your town?
So first thing I have to say is, if this was the case in 40-something states, the internet would be just labeled with these videos of weird fog with reflecting. Everyone who's driving a car would be like, what the hell is going on? There's no snow accumulating on my vehicle, but I'm seeing these particles all over the place. And like, Florida has never seen snow before. In fact, it has. Maybe not in a long time, but Florida has seen snow. It's not completely unheard of. And that's where people are saying, oh, this fog in Florida, people are seeing the drones. They must be spraying chemicals. To their credibility, though, I remember in 2014, I wrote an article that David Icke aggregated, which, of course, I remember it because of that in particular, is South Dakota was using drones to do weather modification. And some of those ingredients in weather modification are aluminum oxide. which normally is less than a nanometer in size. So the EPA doesn't test for it. So that's why accumulatively people are worried about Alzheimer's and other health disease for Welsbach stratospheric aerosol injections. That's the technical term. Welsbach, WELSBACH, stratospheric aerosol injections, where they fly a plane or drone and then they spray a mist of nanoparticles. It reflects the sun and allegedly cools the earth because of, global warming, and not like Al Gore stands to make, billions and millions of dollars off of carbon credits, right? That it's a real concern. And even though we can't measure it, we know it's happening. It couldn't be just our path through the solar system and around the sun. Of course, the earth is warming, so we need to spray toxic chemicals to do this. And it's funny I mentioned Kristen Megan Kelly, because she's the original chemtrail whistleblower who we got to get on the show here, have her on again to talk about this. It's been a while since she's been on the broadcast, and I'll be seeing her in Miami when I go speak at the Counterparty, which, by the way, Tatiana Moroz will be joining us this Thursday to talk about Counterparty in Florida. So if you're in Florida and you want to get a chance to meet me, see me, I'll be there. But the idea is this fog, which looks like snow to me, Don. Just gonna call it out. That looks like snow to me. And it looks like somebody used it to make a point. Fake videos. That's what's going around. That's what's viral. Could there be chemicals in nanoparticles in the fog? Absolutely. They say that megatons of aluminum oxide are being shared and sprayed in the sky to formulate clouds, right? Cloud seeding, as well as silver iodide. That's another metal that's used to make clouds. It's interesting because here we have people claiming, they're spraying chemicals with these drones. I'm not completely bought into that, but I wouldn't say I put it past our government to do secretive programs and do testing in certain areas with spraying certain chemicals.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly do have a history of doing that, and that's why I don't completely write off that theory off rip. I do tend to concur that it's probably something a little more explainable, or maybe just outright hoaxing on the internet for clicks and views because of just the way that social media is. I know that because TikTok is allegedly getting banned on January 19th, which I've been telling people is probably not going to happen, because it has to, as soon as they attempt to implement that, it's going to have to be kicked up to the Supreme Court and the appeals court and all this other sort of stuff, which is probably going to cause it to get stretched out even further. So, but because of that, and a lot of people believing that it is going to get banned on the 19th, they're sort of just going balls to the wall with whatever they want on TikTok. But when it comes to the potentiality of this actually being some sort of a nefarious operation, there is a bit of a historical precedent that suggests, or at the very least illustrates, that it's not completely out there. So we have things like Operation Sea Spray that took place in San Francisco in the early 1950s, is where the United States Navy was using naval ships to blow in fog, quote unquote, artificial fog, off of these naval ships into San Francisco, basically conducting biological warfare testing or simulations or something of that nature. Allegedly, they were unaware of the harmful nature of the chemicals that they were using until like a few people ended up going to the hospital, and then they realized, oh, shit, this actually harms people. And then there's another program that happened from the late 50s up until the mid 60s. So this went on for a few years, actually, called Operation Large Area Coverage, where the United States Army Chemical Corps and a couple of other departments from the Gulf of Mexico all the way up into Canada, so throughout the entirety of the Midwest of the U.S., would have planes flying through, spraying a series of chemicals. They would have sprayers set up on tops of large buildings. And the official story for that, particularly in places like St. Louis, where there's still to this day people suffering from the effects of these very damaging chemicals that the Army sprayed on them without their knowledge, the official story at the time was, oh, we're running smokescreen tests in case we get attacked by the Soviets. So like that was the big lie. What they were actually doing is it was another similar to Operation Sea Spray. It was like biological warfare testing on American citizens, using these chemicals that were incredibly harmful. And yeah, I think Corpus Christi, Texas, along with St. Louis, Missouri, and a few other places were some of the areas hit the hardest. But as I said, it stretched throughout the entirety of the Midwest, and it's certain those aren't certain. Excuse me, English is hard sometimes. Those two instances aren't the only incidents where they would conduct tests like this. I mean, we've covered on this show plenty of times where there is a very vast documented history of spraying things in the sky for biological testing.
There's Popeye. They openly admit to it. They have weather modification websites as a derivative of government websites all across the United States, including Texas. So, like, weather modification is a real thing. The idea that slang term chemtrail has been weaponized to disprove the fact that geoengineering is going on. But there is a whole website, geoengineeringwatch.org. You guys can check out Dane Wingington. He does a lot of research there. Kristen Megan Kelly was in the original What Are They Spraying For documentary, which discusses ground samples and testing of all that stuff that was going on. But these are real things that the government says is going on. And Maria in the chat says this usually happens at night. So is that why it's at night? Because they're spraying chemicals and they're toxic chemicals, and there could be side effects, and they don't want people to notice that they're doing aerosol injections in these local communities in these areas. Well, it's a possibility. Missy in the chat says that's what I'm saying, Don. 100%. People agreeing with you, Don. So this brings me to the idea of these drones, right? I think it's surveillance. Either they're checking for terrorism, they're checking some kind of ratings or readings, or they're setting up a grid for surveillance, which I think is the most likely, to police you and police everything you do. And this wouldn't be the start, because we already got it in the news that AI cameras are turning in drunk drivers. Here it is in the news right here and right on our screen. New AI cameras, which can tell if a driver is drunk, are rolled out on UK roads. And so they got them on the roads, and they have these cameras that tell if you're drunk already, just hanging there in the roads, and they'll report you, or the cops will come get you. Why not on drones, Don?
Right.
AI police. The AI police is here, Don. We don't have to wait for the AI cops anymore. That's the new police brutality. AI.
Exactly. And it's such an egregious violation of people's privacy rights. It should be one of those things that is inherently safeguarded. Of course, we don't live in a society anymore that really values the rights of the individual. It's all about collectivism. It's all about bowing down to the state, the government, statism. Of course, me as an anarchist, I detest statism wholeheartedly because of that reason, because of it being a collectivist ideology that ultimately usurps the rights of the individual to, be the arbiter of their own freedom, to have their own autonomy and individual sovereignty. But in a world where people actually did give a about those sort of things, personal privacy rights should be one of the things that we uphold the most, because it's every person has a right to be secure in their effects, in their privacy, in their private matters, without just having it free for the entire government to see and know about. And sadly, this is something that's been going on for many, many, many years. I mean, I wrote an article probably 2 years ago at this point discussing a number of conspiracies that were true. And one of them was mass surveillance. And I remember mentioning that there was an article written in the New Yorker all the way back in the early 1900s, I believe 1905, where they were discussing wiretapping in telegrams and the Morse code devices that they would utilize to communicate. So before the creation of telephones and things of that nature. So it's been going on for a very, very long time, and of course became widely publicly known around 2013 when Edward Snowden blew the whistle on the NSA's PRISM program and the warrantless collection of user data and things of that nature. So unfortunately, this is just the next evolution of that. You would think that citizens, after finding out about the mass illegal surveillance that was revealed by Snowden and Glenn Greenwald, a number of these other individuals, that people would have been up in arms and said, you don't have the right to take our private information, to use it against us, but of course that never happened. So sadly, we have these the next evolution of this, just integrated with artificial intelligence. Yeah, that's a
Well, we're going to get there. They keep that thought integrated with AI, because I got a story we're going to talk about about that here in just a moment. But on the same topic, schools are using AI to send police to students' homes. So now schools are implementing AI, and I warned about this early in 2011, 2012, when I was writing about Common Core curriculum, and I'm like publishing government documents saying that they're going to use retina scanners, vertebrae posture monitors, all these different things for students, and surveil them, so that at the end of the day, they can have some kind of communist manifesto where it just prints out what schools they qualify for scholarships and what schools they don't, but also will monitor all their behaviors, and you basically become some kind of surveillance state. And they said, "Oh, you're a wild conspiracy theorist, Kristan T. Harris." And I even led a revolt at the RNC in 2014 about Common Core curriculum, warning that would lead to this. Now we got CRT, which is Common Core curriculum, communitarianism, because speaking is easy, on crack, which is basically communism. But schools are now using AI to send police to your students' homes. So what is it? Our kids, so how could AI be used? Maybe the kids are talking about mom and dad and something that they did. Maybe they're smoking pot and they're talking about it at school. Or maybe mom and dad are fighting or abusive. I'm sure there's some way or some reason they want to shine this as a good thing, right? AI sent the police to the student's home. They're a hero. Thank God for AI, because that's the new God.
Yeah, that's typically how they sell these sorts of things. Of course, harkening back to what we were talking about at the beginning of this program with the biometrics and the border surveillance and the digital IDs and all these sorts of things that the new Trump administration is just so willingly pushing for. Even when we get to the integration of AI with mass surveillance or using AI in schools to send police to parents' homes, they always tend to sell it on a bill of convenience. Oh, look how convenient it is that you can use this technology for X, Y, and Z purposes. Or in addition to the convenience, of course, a lot of the times they'll hit us with that whole greater good or public good narrative, the social contract, which is a total arbitrary construct nonsense. But that's how they will sell these things to get people to buy into it. Oh, it's for the greater good. Oh, it's going to help people. Because, of course, a lot of the mainstream folks, a lot of the normies, the average individuals, they still live under the mythology of American police actually protecting and serving the public. So if you say something like, oh, the police are the standing army that our founding fathers warned of, and give all of these instances of how the police are the force that enforces the tyranny of the state against the people, and how they do not help us, they do not protect us, they do not serve us. That's blasphemy. We need the cops for this, that, and the third. And a lot of what I've been seeing, a lot of that applies with this sort of AI technology. People are so, and not just AI, but I mean, I remember when we did our episode last year talking about Apple Vision Pro, very similar. People are so just on board with the cool new thing, and they're just totally willy-nilly willing to, sign away any of their rights. And of course, this has been going on since like Facebook. Remember when Facebook came out in 2004, it was the cool new thing. Of course, it was shortly after the CIA terminated their LifeLog project, which coincidentally is very similar to what Facebook was shortly thereafter. And of course, Facebook was seeded with a lot of money from In-Q-Tel, which is a CIA front corporation. So it makes you think. And then, of course, you have those little terms and conditions. Oh, let us collect your data. Let us get that metadata, that new age currency. And so, sadly, it's much like the cameras on the roads in the UK. It's just the next iteration of these agendas coming to fruition.
So on the live or on the line of the story, schools using AI to send police to students' homes, it says it was one of the worst experiences of her life. Worst experience. Schools are employing dubious AI-powered software to accuse teenagers of wanting to harm themselves. So it's looking for suicide. Isn't that interesting? And sending the cops to their homes as a result, when often chaotic and traumatic results. So as the New York Times reports, software being installed in high school students' school-issued devices track every word they type. So if your kid uses a school tablet or laptop, they're monitoring everything they do. An algorithm, and that should be a given, Don, but I don't think most people think like that, right? But an algorithm then analyzes the language for evidence of teenagers wanting to harm themselves. Unsurprisingly, the software can get it wrong by woefully misinterpreting what the students are actually trying to say. A 17-year-old in Neosho, Missouri, for instance, was woken up by the police in the middle of the night. As it turns out, a poem she had written years ago triggered the alarms of a software called Go Guardian Beacon, which its maker describes as a way to safeguard students from physical harm. It says it was the worst experiences of her life, the teenager mother told New York Times. It was a wellness check. Just a wellness check. AI is going to decide whether you need a wellness check. Let's check out Go Guardian. Here it is. We're going to pull it up on the screen. What do they say about Go Guardian? Well, this is what it has to say. Go Guardian has prevented an estimated 18,623 students from physical harm since March of 2020. How do they know that, Don?
Well, I mean, obviously they're scanning all of their information. They're they have an algorithm to check through the messages and this, that, and the third. And I find it interesting that that this thing started working in March of 2020. Maybe they implemented it years prior. Maybe they implemented it in March of 2020. I don't know, but I do know that throughout the reporting that I did during the COVID era, child self-harm among children and adolescents, and even suicide among children and adolescents, spiked during the COVID lockdowns. It was one of the many just absolutely catastrophic effects of these of the lockdowns that they put in place, in addition to drug abuse spiking, domestic abuse spiking, child trafficking spiking, all of these things that the government so readily ignored in pursuit of implementing this quasi-martial law for 3 years for a fake disease that has never been isolated, never been proven to exist, that even by the official standards had a 99.9% survival rate. But I digress. So it's not shocking that it started getting a lot of use during the whole COVID era because of these spikes in adolescent and childhood self-harm and things of that nature. And if I'm going to play devil's advocate, and on the one hand, I can understand and even appreciate to a degree having some kind of technology in place to help prevent self-harm, especially among children. As a survivor of suicide attempt myself, back when I was a very foolish young man many years ago, I can appreciate anything that actually works to try to help people who are struggling with those kinds of demons actually continue to live. I just can't appreciate when obviously these technologies are being used for nefarious purposes, sort of abusing the necessary aspect of trying to help people who actually need it. But like I said, if I'm playing devil's advocate,
Is that the government's job, though, Don? Is it the government's job to monitor you at all times for suicide? Here, Go Guardian teacher says 14,000 schools implement the software. 14,000 schools. That's a lot of. I wonder how many schools there are in the United States, but 14,000 seems like a lot. That's almost, 250 schools per state.
Right. And the big thing that actually should be addressed, and then that's why I was only partially playing devil's advocate, because what this kind of technology does, it's only a band-aid over a gashing wound. They're more so looking to treat the symptoms when they should be addressing what's actually causing it. Don't just put this in place and say, oh yeah, we're going to use it to help, prevent kids from harming themselves. Actually take a look, zoom out, and ask why the hell young adults, adolescents, and children, because it's up in all three of those categories, why are young people starting to self-harm more? Why are young people starting to commit suicide more? What is causing this mental health epidemic in America? That is what should actually be focused on. But instead, as I mentioned, of course, they're abusing the necessity to actually help treat mental health for their own nefarious purposes of instituting this new, surveillance grid AI sort of nonsense. And that's the part that actually, does piss me off quite a lot, that they are taking the mental health crisis and epidemic in this country, and instead of actually addressing it to prevent the self-harm from happening in the first place, they're using it for these agendas.
To justify surveillance, right? That's where we're going with this. It's not the government's job to keep you safe. It can't keep you safe, nor can it prevent suicide. They say it does. Who knows how those stats are thought? By the way, it says that Go Guardian prevents suicide and self-harm alerts, customizable escalation paths, and 24/7 review of alerts. Supports student safety by identifying online activity indicates a risk of suicide, self-harm, and harm of others. So they monitor all that. They want to know what your kids are up to. So that being said, a Republican is pushing a bill to shoot down these mystery drones that may or may not start surveilling you for suicide too, because, well, maybe the government wants to take these mystery drones and find out anyone that might commit a crime, aka Minority Report, aka pre-crime, aka where we're going, because that's where this is going. This is exactly, I'm not even making this up. This is 100% where the government would love to go with this. Big contracts, big private contracts with this different organizations, so they can have drones flying everywhere across the United States at all times, right? To go ahead and then monitor what you are doing in real time all the time. So in 2015, I wrote about a city that was all automated, all robots, all drones. They built it out in New Mexico, right? Completely. They built a huge city just to test how a fully automated world would work, Don. All right. And so in the news today, in the U.S. Sun, Toyota Town, which is one of these futuristic towns that they built. There's a couple of them that they, in the middle of deserts, in the middle of nowhere, they've built completely automated cities where robots basically rule the night, right? They rule the world. It's all automation, all robots, all the time. And so they test drone delivery. They test self-driving cars. These cities are used for the government probably to test out their automation, robot dogs, all that stuff, patrolling cities. I'm sure it's really interesting. But Toyota Town, Robolville, top secret living lab robot city of the future built near volcano, will become the first human residence later this year. We'll get its first human residence later this year. So they're now integrating up to 2,000 people into a completely automated surveillance smart city.
And it's so
You're like, oh no.
I hate it, dude. Because I remember the first time I ever heard about smart cities. There was an article published by Activist Post back in 2018, and I had no idea what the hell they were talking about. So of
With
course,
fiber,
I went and started doing my research, and of course, subsequently over the years, we've had some great personalities like Dan Dix and Jason Burmis, really go in and talking about these agendas to create these, fully automated smart cities. I know James Corbett has also done a fantastic job discussing that this stuff is coming down the pike. And man, it's any nightmare you can think of with regard to like the Great Reset 2030 agenda, New World Order, surveillance panopticon, fully automated luxury communism. That's exactly what these things are.
Well, look at this thing. So they're showing us on the screen what we've been talking about all along, and that's self-driving vehicles will have their own road, and humans will have a separate road because the biggest unfactored variable is human random activity, is human nature, right? So if they could control how vehicles drive, how fast they go, which way they turn, how they turn, when they turn, where they go, you can get in your self-driving car and never have to worry about it crashing, right? The health statistics go way up. So they're building the city, much like we talked about for a long time, how they would have to do it with the self-driving automated, vehicle lane and then a human lane, completely separate. And they have all these like sustainable development buildings where they have the plants growing on top and, make it feel real, let's say tropical, Amazonian, really, and not really like a major city. And then not only that, it's going to have nonstop surveillance. It's going to have the trash bin AI robots, the ones that know whether you throw away recyclables or not, so they can ticket you. They'll have like when you walk into a bar, it'll know what drink you want because you all have been talking about it. You're going to say that you want that margarita when you go to your favorite bar, and when you get there, the margarita will be waiting for you because the bar will be alerted that you're on its way and that they're already charged your card and the margarita's on the bar waiting for you when you get there, right? They're going to know what you're buying, where you go, who you're with, who you're not with, if you cheat on your husband or wife or not, if you are a pastor and you're being disingenuous and hanging out at the porn star or not. And listen, people make mistakes, but the point is the government can extort you for all the evil things you do, right? They will know if you're dishonest, what your percentage of truthfulness is, because they'll listen to you at all times. They'll know. It'll be Santa Claus in real life. IRL, Santa Claus, IRL. We'll know when you're sleeping. We'll know when you're not. We'll know when you're good or bad, and they'll be able to literally monitor you at all times. This is a smart city. And, when Donald Trump talks about making new futuristic cities, this is what he's talking about with biometric scanning.
Yeah, 100%. And the really scary thing about it is we're already halfway there, as it sits, because when you think about targeted ads, for example, this is a great example because this is something that just happened to me probably within the last week. I was over at a friend's house and we're talking about food, and we're like, man, I could really go for some tacos, some good spicy Mexican food, just casual scroll on Facebook a few minutes later, and what comes up except a sponsored targeted ad for come get this new spicy tacos. And we're like, man, this shit's got to be listening to us, dog. There's no way it's a coincidence. And so I'm sure you can ask anybody, they've had those sorts of experiences over and over again. And so we're already halfway there.
Well, look at this. So in this video, for the listeners out there, there's like drones flying all over the sky, sky taxis, right? They have that sky taxi that they want to build in Tampa, these little hubs for flying vehicles. And, they have their little restaurants that are all AI driven, Robotville, basically the $8 billion plan for a robot city that's going to have humans living in it, up to 2,000, to see how they work alongside humans. So I don't know, Don, what's your feelings about corporations building cities? Because Toyota's building the city. Like, what's your thought of Amazon building cities or AI companies like Foxconn building cities. They built a little city here in Wisconsin that nobody uses and has their own little police force and probably their own laws and legislature that they police on their own, on their own property.
So I don't dig it. I am very much against it, mostly on the basis of, these corporations like maybe Toyota is not a prime example, but Amazon definitely a prime example of these big corporate interests, private interests tied to the government, these big corporatist, capitalist, industrialist entities that continue to privately consolidate power. And of course, on a decentralized level, peer-to-peer interaction, voluntaristic economy, agorism, corporate competition, privatization is a good thing when it's not monopolized. When we have these corporations that are creating monopolies, they're continuing to consolidate more and more and more and more and more power, and they're working with the federal government. They basically have the federal government by the balls because they're lobbying them so much. Lobbying is just another word for bribery. It just leads. It's a recipe for disaster. And not a fan.
Okay, so my end game on this is that surveillance nonstop, smart cities, smart roads, smart world. They live in real action. No one would have thought that George Orwell would have predicted the future, but here we are. The more we see it, the more Orwellian it goes. AI is, spying on your children in school, letting you know if they're suicidal. Look, it's in the best interest, but it's the government that is playing mom and dad, right? It's the parents' job to be involved in their children's life.
Right.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes down to it, is like, what is it that we should be doing? They now have robot dogs, robot tanks. They got robots working in the workforce. And how long will it be until, essentially we do away with owning any homes, Don? You know who will own the home in the future, Don?
BlackRock.
Amazon, BlackRock, Toyota. You'll have a job, and guess what? You'll get a discount living environment because of the fact that you work for GE, or you work for one of these major corporations, Microsoft, and everyone will have a different living environment. Maybe you want to go work for Northwestern Mutual Life and they treat their employees great. They cover your rent completely, but then they pay you basically peanuts, right? Or a little bit more, and they feed you, and you only eat whatever the government agency you work for or the company that you work for provides you. And I don't know how I feel about this, but it's maybe the way America always has been, where some major company has really helped build a city. The Rockefellers built New York. That's no secret, right?
So we have a bit of a historical precedent that actually exemplifies just how bad these kinds of things can actually be. So living out here in Virginia, moreover towards West Virginia, actually out in the Appalachians, back in the day, there were these things called coal miner towns, where these corporations would come in and they buy up all these coal mines and whatnot, and they would create these towns. They would build houses, stores, you name it. And you would get paid not in actual cash dollars, but you would get paid in corporate credits that could only then be used in the corporate store that the corporations built inside the town that they built, which is directly adjacent, connected to the coal mines that you're working in. So it was essentially an early version of what we're discussing now, a much more primitive version of what we're discussing now. And it was terrible. It did not end well. It actually ended up if I remember correctly, it was called the Coal Wars. It was one of the only times where the president of the United States had to deploy the U.S. military to actually fight against American citizens, because the people of these towns got so pissed off and fed up that they took up arms. A lot of them were World War I veterans. They took up arms and they said, we're not going to allow you to treat us this way anymore. And the military had to go in because originally, let me backtrack. The reason the military went in, because originally these corporations outsourced to private security. Like the Pinkertons and private law enforcement, essentially, to enforce these coal worker strikes. They went on strikes. They said, we want better wages, we want this, that, and the third, because the corporations are basically bleeding us dry and using us for cheap labor. We're basically slaves. They basically own us, and so the private. The Pinkertons and some of these other private security guys came in to try to break the strikes. They took up arms. Some folks got killed. Long story short, the president had to send in the military to sort of put the kibosh on all of this. And it was one of the, to my knowledge, the only time in American history that bombs were actually dropped on American citizens. One of the few times. I mean, of course, there was that the MOVE bombing in 1985. But my point is, this is actually a thing that happened, and it wasn't good. It did not end well.
Interesting stuff, guys. Well, check this out. On the subject of drones, UFOs, aliens, while we were away, we took some time off. This article hit, and I'm like, Don and I been talking about this. We've been talking about this, and that's this article here. Hey, let's go. And we got this right here. We'll pull this up. CIA docs claim life did exist on Mars, and it was population of very large people who built pyramids. Would you be surprised if this was really true? I mean, the CIA does have documents that claims this. What do they know that we don't, Don? And what is this about?
So the point that I made the day that you sent this to me, because I actually shared it on my Facebook page, your post when you had originally posted the screenshot of this article. The point that I made was that isn't it just so convenient that they are now discussing this particular incident, which we have discussed for going on a decade now. At least I know I've personally discussed this for going on a decade now. The article here from the Daily Mail is specifically discussing the incident during Project Stargate, wherein they had a remote viewer basically do some remote viewing and remote view back to 1 billion BC on Mars. And I've talked about that on this show before.
What is remote viewing, man? Like, for somebody out there that's listening to this podcast and has never dove deep into the psychology and weird conspiracies and the weird like tests that the government has done, what is remote viewing? Like, is that like watching from a video, a TV at home, and they can see what's going on someplace else?
So essentially what remote viewing is in this context, it's a alleged extrasensory ability that allows someone to, in their mind, see the past or the future, essentially, in the most layman's terms possible.
So time travel.
Well, no, it's sort of like psychic, essentially, but able to see the past, distant past, recent past, distant future, close future, whatever. And so what they had done in this particular experiment, part of Project Stargate, the CIA brought in a number of these remote viewers who allegedly possessed these abilities, and they tested them with, we're going to have one of our agents hold this sealed envelope with.
Is that like Ghostbusters, where Bill Murray is like holding up a piece of paper and he's trying to hit on the hot chick, and he's like, she's like, it's a square, and she had it wrong. He's like, absolutely right. And then the other guy that's there nails it, and he's like, nope. And then he shocks him. He's like, for getting it wrong. Remember that? That's Ghostbusters, the first one, 1984. Not everyone's seen that movie, which I can't believe. It's a classic. Love Ghostbusters. Right. One of my favorite horror - comedy in that weird paranormal horror comedy vein. Great movie.
Right. But anyway, so the point is, they went about conducting this experiment, and allegedly the remote viewer said that what he saw, because the envelope that they gave him, there was a series of coordinates and a date, and it was sealed in the envelope, and he wasn't aware of it, or something along those lines. I forget the exact details, but it's literally in the Daily Mail piece that we have up here. Essentially, he says that he saw, this civilization with these vast pyramids, and it's like it's at the very end of their time, and it's collapsing, and all this, that, and the third, and they ultimately reveal to him that this was 1 billion BC on Mars, and this sounds incredibly science fiction, of course, but this is
our government using our tax money to do this, right?
Woo-hoo! Yeah, but of course it is this is a legitimately declassified CIA document of something that they allege to have actually occurred. And the point that I made when this article came out was that this is old news. These documents have been out since the early 2000s. And anytime you would dare talk about it, up until about a week ago, you were a conspiracy nut, even though you had the documents to actually prove it, or, at least allegedly prove it. But now, of course, and this was the point that I made, was that now that it is convenient for them, now that we're going into this UFO disclosure, PSYOP sort of, limited hangout information warfare that's been going on that we've mentioned, now they see it fit, they being the intelligence assets of the corporate media, mainstream media, Mockingbird media, see fit to drip this information out, to implant it in public consciousness. Oh yeah, by the way, there's these declassified CIA documents that said there was life on Mars with pyramids and megastructures 1 billion years ago. When, as I mentioned just a couple weeks ago, you'd be a crackpot conspiracy nut for even daring to try to talk about these sorts of things. And so I very much believe they have an agenda with planting this story out there in the media. It's not new news. It hasn't been for 20 years now. So why they suddenly find the need to report on it certainly makes you wonder.
Well, the classified project was conducted at Fort Meade, a real government facility in Maryland, recruiting men and women who claim to have extrasensory perception, ESP, to help uncover military and domestic intelligence secrets. The experiment subjects was transported to the planet during the specified year, reporting an oblique view of a pyramid and a very large road with monuments similar to those known among ancient Egyptians on Earth. And shut down in 1995, but it shut down. The program shut down in 1995, so it went on for a while. But during its more than 10 years of existence, psychics known as remote viewers participated in a wide array of operations, from locating hostages kidnapped by Islamic terrorist groups to tracing the paths of fugitive criminals within the United States. Leading up to the closure was Mars Exploration, May 22nd, 1984, a document classified in 2017 that was recently resurfaced, online. The document is sparse in detail, beginning with methods of site acquisitions, sealed envelope cooped with geographical coordinates, and the envelope was provided to the subject before the interview, but was not opened until afterwards. Is that how they verify their authenticity? That they know what it says in the envelope, what was written down?
Yeah, so the CIA agents know what's in the envelope. The only person that doesn't know is the psychic. And so then, if the psychic comes back and says, "Yeah, this is what I saw," they can then sort of, say, "Well, shit, that's what's in the envelope. Only we knew it. Nobody told you. So how'd you know?"
Bogus or not? I mean, do psychics exist? Like, if they did, would they not be more successful? Wouldn't they all be rich? There's all these questions I have about psychics. And like, if they wanted to, couldn't they use it for helping themselves to be better off? Some people, I don't know. I'm not sure how it works, man. I'm not dogging anyone who claims it. I'm not quite sure. I'm just saying, if you're psychic, then you would think that you would use that in some way to be prosperous.
So interesting rabbit hole to go down. I posit that everyone has the ability to be psychic, because once we really start digging into it, psychic abilities, quote unquote, it's literally just our intuition. It's our sixth sense. Everyone has had some sort of incident where their gut has told them to do this or to not do that, and something has resulted in, proving them right. Hell, just the other day, I got a gut instinct telling me that, somebody's about to shoot me a text message. 5 seconds later, ding.
Was it me? Was it me? No, just
No,
kidding. Yeah.
that wasn't you. But that's happened multiple times. I mean, the only car accident I ever got in my life was back in October of 2019. All day, I was supposed to go up to Kings Dominion, it's a local amusement park that I used to work at and still had a lot of friends working at the time. And so I was going up there to visit them. And all day long, my gut instinct was telling me, don't go. Put it off. Go another day. Go tomorrow. Do not go tonight. I decided to ignore it because, of course, I'm hard-headed. I go. It had been drizzling all day, but by the time I get on I-95 and I start heading north on 95, the bottom drops out, man. It's pouring down. It's raining so hard. It's like 10 o'clock at night. I can't see a damn thing. So I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I'm going home. I pull off on this exit that I'd never taken before to loop around to get on the opposite end of the highway to head back home. Going through the intersection, somebody from out of state's not paying attention. Boom, slams right into me. Only car accident I ever got into in my life. And if I had listened to my gut and stayed home, wouldn't have happened. But you know, plenty of people have had instances like that, and so that's.
Well, are women more like? I wonder if women are more, because they always talk about female instinct. Like have you ever like left or broke up with some girl and then you hung out with the new girl and she blows you up all of a sudden just when you're hanging out with that girl? Like you hear all these stories of female intuition, or like it's a real thing. Maybe they're just more sensitive to the vibrations of the world, and that's really what they're feeling. And they feel those the energy that it's changing. And we've all had those situations, or maybe a boyfriend, isn't being faithful, or a girlfriend, and you've had that gut instinct and it was completely on, whatever it is. For you, it was an accident. People have those intuitions. Does that mean that it's our brain that's smarter than we think, subconsciously puts it together and knows the answer and is trying to tell you in dreams and other ways? Or is it really a sixth sense skill like being psychic?
Well, that's why I don't necessarily categorize it as quote unquote like being psychic. I think that is being psychic. Now, granted, I do put the caveat on there that a lot of these professional psychics, I think they're just grifters that are just, scamming people.
Yeah.
But ultimately, once we get into the actual phenomenon of extrasensory abilities, I 100% believe that there is something there. And I absolutely believe that everybody possesses these abilities. They're latent. They just have to be exercised. They're like anything else. You have to practice at them. You have to work at them, and I think a lot of it, connects to our third eye, the pineal gland. And, that's a whole other deep conversation to get into.
Ralph on X says all people have the ability. Essentially just puts all. I'm assuming he means all people have the ability to be psychic, which might be some truth to that. That all based off that article about the CIA Mars program. What was it called? Stargate? Project Stargate.
Yeah.
Here we have it in the news, Don. We've talked about this relentlessly about how AI is going to run actors and actresses out of jobs other than licensing how they look, right? Because AI, you can build whatever kind of human you want. And, you have the famous people, the Indiana Jones, where you want to license his looks, Harrison Ford, and his voice, and maybe use them to put out movies in the future, and you'll just have AI develop it. But TCL's new AI short films range from bad comedy to existential horror. Now, I believe if anything AI can do well, it will be horror movies. Right? If you ever joined the group Cursed AI, it's all super creepy and bizarre, like nightmarish-esque style of video. And if I was going to be in hell, in a hell world, it would be whatever Cursed AI conjures up.
Yeah, I've seen those things, and I've also seen a number of videos on YouTube. A number of the content creators that I follow have done reactions to cursed AI video or things of that nature, and it's wild, man. I was reading through this article earlier when you sent it to me, and it's at least it's good to know that AI is still far enough off to where we can clearly point out that, hey, this is AI generated garbage. But the problem is it's constantly learning, and so we're going to get to a point where we stop seeing this AI generated garbage, and then you're going to pause and be like, oh no.
So here's we're gonna go ahead and we can play some of these shorts. They actually have them on here, and you guys can see them. We won't play the audio; we'll talk over them, but just so people in the background can see, these are AI developed shorts, and you know, short films by TCL Studios, and these are all AI generated. And like, I wonder how realistic they'll look. And for you guys out there, this one, it says Sun and then Day. Sunday might be the name of the movie, and it
Yeah.
looks like basically computer generated, digitally enhanced movies. But I like the fact that AI and CGI is getting more realistic, because I couldn't handle things like the Hulk looking cartoonish in X-Men. You're not X-Men, Marvel, the Marvel
Yeah.
universe. But here we have it. See, look at these. These are like, this is a movie it created. AI created this movie, and it's a futuristic movie with futuristic cities, and it's raining, and essentially, that, look at that. Those shoes look real, Don. Like, this looks like real footage, really recorded, and it's all fictitious, generated by AI. Remember a year ago, we're like, oh, that's fake. This is hard to substantiate that these aren't real actors and actresses.
Right. Yeah. And like I said, eventually it's going to get to the point where the quote unquote garbage AI stops showing up in our news feed, and it's going to give people pause, because then it's going to realize, wait a minute, no, it is still here. It's just gotten to the point where now we cannot differentiate. That's when we're really going to enter this era of just information warfare times a trillion, because once videos can be produced that are indistinguishable from real life, well, to quote Thanos, or at least I think that, it was Thanos in, I think, Endgame, reality can be whatever I want.
Well, that's where we're going with this. Remember the story that was in the news about students in high school taking photos of girls that girls and boys that they were interested in, whether it was male or female, and then the AI was creating virtual porn with those individuals, creating the fake body, and creating the pornographic film. Like, that's where we're at, where you just take a picture of someone and it puts them in a porno flick. Seriously. And kids in high school are doing that. That, literally, look it up. That's a news story we talked about 3 or 4 months ago, wasn't it, Don?
Yep, it was.
But this is almost, you can almost look at it. That looks completely real. Looks like that was like, minus the purple rat, but
my question is, how much artwork from legitimate artists did the AI rip off to make all of this junk? Because, of course, that's always been one of the biggest concerns among those in the actual artistic community, is that AI is learning from stuff that real people actually created. It's using the art that real people actually created to generate these images. So they're plagiarizing and ripping off the artwork of real people without those actual artists getting.
Well, at what point is it being influenced by versus actually ripping off?
Well, I think because of the nature of the technology, I think it bleeds over. I don't think you can.
We've all heard a band that sounds like Green Day and be like, oh, they ripped off Green Day. They sound like Green Day, but they can't be sued because the material was original.
Right. But again, that's what I'm saying. With the nature of this technology, it's not just, it looks like that. They're literally, it'd be one thing if, okay, the band, sounds like Green Day, but it's the original technology. But we're talking about, or, an original song or concept. But if that band took a legitimate song written by Green Day, or even a record label, and put out the song using AI, an AI version of Billy Joel Armstrong's voice, and they're using their lyrics that they wrote, it's no longer just a ripoff,
Well, then it's plagiarism, right?
Exactly. And that's what the AI is doing. It's not just inspired by, it's learning from the artwork of actual artists and using that artwork within its own systems and processes to create stuff from it. And so that's why, many in the art community have raised a lot of red flags about this, because real people's work is getting ripped off.
This is AI we're seeing on the screen right here, Don.
Wild.
It looks just like real people, moves like real people. The mouths move. It doesn't look like a subtitle or anything like that. Fascinating stuff, man. It looks real. It looks good. It looks legitimate. That is scary stuff. All right, for the final story I have for you guys today. For those who are religious, a lot of people put their faith in a higher deity, whether it is the biblical Israeli God, the Jewish God, or it's pagan gods, or if it's Hindu or Buddhism or whatever it is, people higher energy. People put their beliefs into a lot of things. But how about AI? A Swiss church has installed AI-powered Jesus. Why would they install an AI-powered Jesus? It says the small, unadorned church has long ranked along the oldest churches in the Swiss city in Switzerland, but Peter's Chapel has become synonymous with all of that. With all that is new after it installed an artificial intelligence-powered Jesus capable of dialoguing in 100 different languages. It was really an experiment, Marco Schmidt, a theologian with the Peter Sculpa Church. We wanted to see and understand how people react to AI Jesus. What would they talk about with him? See, there you go. You're going to admit your sins to AI Jesus. Did you fornicate? Did you murder somebody? Did you have a swinger party? Did you steal something? What did you do to somebody? What is your guilty conscience? What is it that, are you a good person or not? AI Jesus will be able to tell you. And the installation known as Deus in Machina was launched in August as the latest initiative in a long year's collaboration. So as we said, the Catholic Church was always the NSA, but now AI Jesus is going to go ahead and take all your dirty sins and hang them out for everyone to see.
Yeah, man, it's
and they're going to hate you if I tell you. I remember when I was hating on AI Jesus before, people were saying, I was like, why are you guys thinking and praying? It says, pray to me and I will make your dream come true or whatever. And people are saying, I prayed on the bottom of the TikTok channel of AI Jesus, because AI Jesus also is on TikTok, has tens of millions of views because people are praying to AI Jesus. Why? Because they're putting their faith into machines, and it's going to be hard to differentiate reality from fake world. And kids are growing up outside of their parents. They're no longer involved in their education. Common Core, they don't send home homework that much anymore. All the work is done in school. They have no interaction and know what their kids are being taught. They're being taught to believe in AI and automation and robotics and coding. That's the future, Don. Right. But that being said, guys, tomorrow we got a brand new show. Mark D'Antonio will be joining us, top astronomer. He is also the chief video forensic officer at MUFON, who distinguishes what is real and what is not for UFO videos. He's worked on top secret projects. We're going to be talking drones and UFOs and astronomy. Maybe we'll get into some astrology and stuff like that. Mark D'Antonio will be our guest tomorrow, so don't go anywhere. Make sure you guys tune in. Same time, same channel, KGRADB.com, TheRundownLive.com. Find us on Spotify. Search The Rundown Live, KGRA. We're there, band.video, and just about anywhere where podcasts are found. You guys have a good night. We'll see you soon. I'm Kriston T. Harris, Don Vi Jr. We're checking out. We'll see you guys tomorrow. You guys have a good night.
Dubbed the King of Underground Journalism. You're listening to the Destroyers of Fake News, Kriston T. Harris and Don Vi Jr. on the Rundown Live. Feed your brain and grow healthy ideas. Tune into the Rundown Live, your forecast into the future.